All right. Hey, thanks for coming back to the Sean Burke Show. I appreciate it when you do. As you can see on the screen with me here right now is Dr. Steve Webb. Today, we're going to talk about we have a situation where kids have gone home. We've gone home because of the coronavirus. They're studying from home, and that gives them tremendously more time to access all the crazy stuff on the net. Now, any of us has been on the net, we know how crazy that can go. And Steve here has reached out to us and other places in the media to talk about this because the concern is, do parents really know what's going on and how can this be prevented and what really effect does it have on the kids? So we're going to talk about that today. And you should understand that this gentleman we're talking to is multi-hatted. He comes from a small community in Southern Illinois. He is a police officer and has been for the last 11 years. But get this, he's also for the last 21 years been the superintendent of the local school district. He's been working in the administration in the school district for 28 years. So he's an educator. He's also a police officer. He's also an author. Steve wrote the book Education in a Violent World, and you can find that on Amazon. He's also the founder of Safe School Systems, which basically goes in and helps schools, churches, and other organizations work at prevention of violence and shootings and things like that in the schools or the church. He's also an associate professor in educational administration at Southern Illinois University and McKendree University, specializing in school law and policy. And the gentleman is a father. He has 4 kids, and he's on with us today. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So you were the one that reached out. You obviously have concern, but let's start with, I'm just curious. We have coronavirus hitting us. You're an educator. You're also a police officer, but let's talk about the educator for a second. We have kids that have now had to go home. They've been pulled away from their classmates. You live in a rural community. It'd be interesting to get your perspective. How has that transition been for these kids having to go back home and go to school?
Well, the transition is miserable. It's a terrible transition because we're dealing with broadband issues, technology issues across the nation, and also we're sending them back into an environment that may have been dangerous to start with. We were providing them a safe environment at the school, a safe, orderly, organized, with professionals, and then we're putting them back into an environment, particularly in our impoverished areas, that we're putting them back into a more dangerous environment. And to top it off, they've got now all of this time to be on their technology devices, and we know that cyberbullying and trauma that is occurring to kids occurs largely on social media platforms these days. And now they're being able to access that more in their home environment. So we're going to be dealing with a lot of baggage when we get back to school.
You know, I can't imagine back when I went to school. I can date myself. I graduated from high school in 1982. So long before we had the internet doing what it's doing. I can't imagine what I would have gotten myself into. And again, before we go there, because I'm just curious, I grew up in a rural area a bit as well, small community. You mentioned safety at school. I don't think a lot of people understand why you mention that and what are you talking about? The school is safe and it's not safe at home?
Well, there's a lot of environments where it's not safe at home. Particularly both parents work, nobody's at the house, and then we're putting this child back in the house and they're having to find daycare. Well, daycares are shut down. We've made that environment even worse. Plus, in your impoverished areas, your gang-ridden areas, your areas that were not safe to begin with. Listen, most of the guns that we take off kids in our nation are coming from kids who are scared coming to and from school, not scared of school. Most of the guns come off kids that are protecting themselves on the way to or from school. And now we've put them back in that environment for 24 hours a day, 365 days if we don't go back to school.
Interesting. So kind of a safe haven school would be for these kids, a place they know they can hopefully let their guard down. And I mean, the goal is to educate. You can't educate in a dangerous environment. You need their attention. Safe havens, is that really what I guess we're talking about your school districts, especially, is safe haven?
Well, certainly we're a safe haven, and when a kid's being abused at home, they're coming to school, and we can identify that. We can stop that. Right now, they're not seeing anybody. They're rarely going to the doctor. They're not going to school. They're not going to church. They're not going anywhere where other people can see them and stop the abuse. And now we're putting them back in that environment.
Oh, that's hadn't thought of that.
Absolutely.
Especially with them not going out at all. That's a good point. I don't hardly see very many people, so we have kids that if they are being regularly abused are not. We don't have an opportunity for someone to intervene on that. It's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Certainly, and parents are putting them with whoever they can find to take care of them so they can go to
Yeah.
work. And sometimes those are paramours, those are just people, they're neighbors, and they don't thoroughly vet these people, and then kids are abused. And that's something that we are not able to stop if we can't see them.
Okay. The other part of this that you haven't brought up yet that I know is very real is food. Schools, it's not real to me because I didn't grow up that way, but I know there's a lot of, especially in rural areas, these kids don't get the food they need and they get it at school. Is this an issue?
Absolutely, it's an issue, and it's always been an issue. Listen, schools for since the dawn of these community schools take a long break in the summer, and I know there's schools across the nation have gone to shorter breaks, but still yet most schools do this long summer break. And we know learning, it's detrimental to learning. We know that there's a learning curve that is lost during those long summer months, but at the same time, we were providing them 2 meals a day. Where are they getting those meals now? And if their nutrition is not up, how do we expect them to learn and to flourish and to grow? And that's become our responsibility as well, to see these kids and see that they get nourishment.
And are you guys doing in your school district? I've heard there's places where people can come and get the food from the school for the kids. Are you doing a program like that?
There are schools and towns in the surrounding area. In rural areas, you pick certain towns, and that they allow that food service to be picked up. And then mostly in our rural communities, like in our area, churches really pick up that slack. I mean,
Right.
we were taking lunches to our kids with our buses and taking them to their house and trying to break down all barriers to figure out how to get food to kids. But in the meantime, now we're dealing with this summer break and no funding, and all of the economy has collapsed in our area. So they're cutting funding to schools, cutting people, and we are our worst enemy. What we should be doing is adding people and bringing services to our kids so we can see these kids and make sure that they're safe.
And in the fall, what is your plan right now for the fall?
My plan is to get these kids in and love them and nurture them and get them back into normalcy as much as possible.
And do
We've
you
got to
have, is that the plan? I mean, is that set up?
well, that's not
I
been
mean,
decided by our state, in which we're going
right.
to have to wait to see what their guidance is on that. But certainly, my plan now, and anytime I see a kid, I tell them I'll see you in August.
All right, good. Interesting. You're a police officer as well. I'm curious of your thoughts on what's happening in the country right now. We have some civil unrest. There was police officers that definitely we were out of line in Minneapolis. What are your thoughts? Just you're coming from a smaller community, so I'm interested in your thoughts as a police officer.
Well, and just like any occupation, when you don't have a large pool, I mean, sometimes you get bad employees, and the police force is not. It's not one of those that is exempt from that. Neither is teaching. I mean, sometimes you get teachers that are, especially in rural areas where you don't have very many to choose from. Sometimes you get teachers that are not very good. This is a systemic issue, though. This is more than just about bad cops or bad teachers or great people or bad people. It's about a systemic issue that we've had between the haves and the have-nots and the impoverished, uh, and those that want to believe, that do believe that we can change this. But it's going to take an extreme amount of time, and it's going to take all of us to do that. And the best place to start is our schools. Give us the resources so we can teach these kids tolerance and teach these kids about culture, instead of having to worry about Common Core all day long because we're taking some arbitrary test with some arbitrary cut score that somebody in LA decided, rather than letting our communities help our kids become better people.
You have gotten me interested now. I will tell you that, because I have always felt that we should let it minimally the states decide what is going to be the standards for schools in their area, but local communities as well. Talk a bit more about that. I don't know if everybody really understands the handcuff. I guess I shouldn't use that word in the current situation. The restrictions that you have in your curriculum based coming from elsewhere, and it's not necessarily really viable or needed in your area, or what the kids really should have. So talk to us a bit about that as an administrator.
Well, society believes that you ought to be able to set some type of global standard and everybody meet that standard. So in order to determine whether a school is good, we have to test kids by their age and think that everybody should be in that same level. And so what we're doing is we're testing kids and telling the ones that are failures that you're failures immediately. But still, yeah, we're pressing Common Core, we're pressing English, we're adding these silly uh, mandates rather than looking at that kid, seeing what they're dealing with at their home. Remember, if a kid has, let's say, 5,000 waking hours in a year, say they get about 8 hours sleep, that's a little over 5,000 waking hours. We only get them about 900 of those hours. But of those 900, they're in a safe environment where we can do a lot of things with them. But schools are cutting their vocational programs, they're cutting their music programs, they're cutting the programs that kids like and connect to. And this is directly correlational to our school safety issue and why kids are feeling the stressors that they're feeling today. And teachers, they tell you that they're not teaching to the test. That's a lie.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to gauge their performance and whether they keep their job on 1-day tests. That's the problem with America. That's a problem with society. When we stop that, we get back to teaching kids how to work with their hands and becoming great people, great citizens, then we're going to start that systemic change to what you're seeing right now in our cities.
You're listening to Dr. Steve Webb. The gentleman is a police officer. He's an educator. He's actually 21 years as an administrator in his local school district. He's an author of Education in a Violent World. The gentleman is an associate professor at local universities. He's a founder of Safe School Systems, which helps prevent violence in schools and other areas. You're listening to Sean Burke on The Sean Burke Show. You can go and find this show after it airs out on YouTube, Facebook, but also at seanburke.net. It goes out as an audio podcast, so you can listen to it on SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, all over the place. So you have lots of different formats to listen to it. I hope you'll share this. I like what he's saying. Steve, how should it be? I mean, you started getting into that. How education brought locally, how should it be?
Every single child should have their own individualized education plan, just like special education students do right now. We set their goals, we look at what they're dealing with, social, emotional, and we deal with those issues because those are the things that stops a kid from learning. Those issues that they're bringing in, the baggage that they're bringing in, when you address that first, give them a safe environment, then they start learning. But right now, we only do that with our special education children. Everybody else is like a herd of cattle that we believe that they should go through the chute and all weigh the same if they're the same age. And that is wrong. This world now, with technology, every child has different experiences. Every child has different traumas that they're dealing with from their other 4,100 waking hours of technology and things that they're dealing with outside. When we get a handle on that, then we will start changing what we're doing in terms of our programming. But society can't handle that. Society thinks you got to do a test. When you fail the test, then we can get onto you and we can address more of the test. When we're dealing with sometimes 30 kids in a classroom because we're all in cutback mode. And frankly, right now, one of the most important people that we have in our school is a social worker. And that's not even required in schools in our state. That social worker is dealing with so many different traumas. And until you fix that, why are we sticking them in 4 years of English and 3 years of math and trying to get them to do calculus and mandating that they take the SAT or the ACT we're missing the point. These kids are individuals. We should be treating them like individuals and connecting with them. And if you connect with a kid, now you're going to start working on their successes instead of trying to make them be a success like us. Because you just said, we grew up in a different time.
Yeah.
We grew up in a time when if we had a bully, we could get away from that bully by going home.
Yeah.
Or if it was at church, we could leave church, go home. And now it's 365 days a year, 24/7 by social media. So the world is different. Why are our schools the same as they were 100 years ago?
Well, it's very much like kind of like the Model T was built under a certain platform, and things evolved and changed, but the school system is not. It's very much I agree with what you're saying, and I'm curious of your thoughts on. When you said work with their hands, work with their hand. You know, sports are being cut back. What are your? Because I thought that was a very important time for me to have sports with my friends and to learn how to work as a team and whatnot. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's crucial, and of course, you're talking to a person that I also played college basketball. So I mean, I was the total experience of being an athlete at both the high school and the collegiate level. And you're talking about an area that made me want to do well in school. It made me focus. It made me organize, and it made me learn other people and other cultures uh, because I loved it. I connected with it. I connected with the coach. I connected with the people. I believe 100% of our kids ought to be involved in something extra that they can connect with. We're still sending kids home at 3 o'clock when their parents are coming home at 5. They've got 2 hours unsupervised, if not more. And we expect them to just behave and not do anything problematic. I was on a radio show in Nashville, and they were talking about young kids stealing cars. I said, well, in my school, in my mind, we should be teaching them how to fix their car at our school and giving them all night long to do it if they wanted to.
Yep.
Let them come into the school, work on the car, fix it. We help them, show them how to do it. And then all of a sudden, they're not on the street causing problems. They're doing something that interests them rather than sticking them in another math class because we have a test to take. Kids are different. We need to change.
I'm with you, and what you're saying, you think would help remedy what the situations we have going on in the country right now.
Absolutely. I think the situation going around the country is just a culmination of the oppression, of the not wanting to change the way our minds think or the way our world thinks because we're comfortable with it. Whenever you make change, people are not comfortable. They're getting out of their comfort zone. And I'm one of those. You know, I'm that old fogey I used to make fun of that didn't want to change from their cell phone. They still wanted a flip phone. Now, I'm starting to get there because I've got grandchildren now, and I'm trying to learn their social media platforms. Even though I'm a social media investigation expert, they're still tough to expand at my age. Well, just think about our teachers and the things that they're aware of and the things that they do within our classrooms, and our parents. Parents think if a child is behaving and being quiet in their bedroom, that's a great thing for those kids. But you don't know what those kids are seeing on their screen through their computer. Because they're being quiet does not mean they're not being traumatized.
Yeah, absolutely different than back in the day when you and I were probably in our rooms being quiet, maybe reading a book. You have access today to the incredible anything out there. This window, this portal looking into your screen allows you to escape into anywhere in the world. It's really something. So, all right, let's talk about that, because you brought up in your email to us wanting to talk about what these kids run into. So we have parents listening. What should they be aware of?
Well, first of all, be aware of the signs that something's going on within your child's life. I mean, children's communication skills are getting worse because of their communication through technology, and sometimes you think they're being great. They smile, everything's great, but there's something inside of them going certainly bad. And you have to be aware when there's those subtle differences are there. Nobody knows your child better than you do. And that's what I tell teachers. Nobody knows that child better than you do, and the parents. So when that child comes in and you see a breach in their norm, it doesn't have to be a breach in some type of list that the National School Safety Clearinghouse put together. When you see a difference, respond, act on it. If you see differences in their sleeping habits, in their eating habits, if you notice that they're depressed or they're not hanging around with their friends or talking to their friends anymore that they just had, if you see that there are things going on with them where they're crying or distraught or maybe even sick with headaches, communicate with them, and they're going to say nothing's wrong. But you have to be the one to initiate whenever they say that, to find out what's wrong. You can't just take that as, oh, well, they told me nothing's wrong, because kids don't want us in their world. I devoted an entire chapter in my book to technology and what it's doing to our kids and what it's doing to our world because of this issue. And here we are with COVID-19 sending them home in that environment all day and all night. And we're telling them that it's okay to do remote learning and do all this technology. They need humans. And what happens when they get around other humans? They don't know how to interact. And so they're not connecting. And now we get school safety issues and we get violence. And that's what we need to protect right now before we get back in August.
So you're listening out there. The book again is Education in a Violent World. By the way, I say this frequently. Steve has not paid me to be on. I've not paid him to be on. We just are interested in this topic and we appreciate him coming on to talk to us. You know, talking, communicating is interesting. That's the first step. A parent sees something going on. Talk to the kids. Yeah.
Communication is the key. Understanding that there's something going on. But I'll tell you one other key to this is seeking help. I've been a school administrator for a long time, law enforcement for a long time, and I'll tell you, I'm not a counselor. If I need counseling done, I find a counselor. That's why we hired a full-time social worker. That's why we hire these counselors to fit that mold, because we teachers are not counselors. We need that person. But in our world, parents believe that they're bad parents if their kid's dealing with something that is, out of the ordinary. They don't want their friends to know. They don't want their family to know. So they just don't address it. They try to keep it quiet. And that's the absolute worst thing you can do. There are people out there that can help with these, that has seen this over and over again. Find that help, because being a parent, we don't have those tools.
No, I get
Somebody
it.
else does, though.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that, but I also feel that as a parent myself, step one is to really to communicate with your kid and understand what is going on as best as you can. I understand there's situations where you need to get further help, but I want to encourage any parents listening out there. If you see something, this is just from me, I'm interested in your thoughts, Steve, but if you see something is abnormal, make it safe and let them talk to you and not knock their head off for whatever they're going to say. I can tell you, as growing up in school, a small town especially, I don't know if it's worse in a small town or not, but it was like a fishbowl. We had one high school. We had one junior high school, and all the kids went there. And so there was some certain pressure in that. And there's times when I think of it even sometimes still, of someone in the school that was extremely threatening to me and threatened physical violence, that if they found me, that I would be pounced. And it was real to me. It was scared the daylights out of me. It affected my sleep, eating, where I went, if I could go out. I mean, I understand this is real. But I just want to encourage parents to communicate. I mean, my parents missed it, and I don't blame them. They were busy. They had their thing going on. But as a parent myself, I've tried to watch that with my kids. Any thoughts you have? You have kids.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, we've got kids that are involved in travel baseball and travel basketball or travel soccer, and we're gone every weekend, and that's supposedly our family time, but there is no time to just sit there. And the days of having dinner or with everybody at the table are largely over at this time, because everybody has so many things to do. Kids are taking lessons and this and that. the first thing you do is be able to communicate with your kid and understand when they say nothing's wrong, that's not necessarily the truth. You need to find out. You need to understand the signs of depression. You need to understand the signs of when somebody is becoming suicidal. Every 40 seconds, somebody takes their own life in our world. Every 40 seconds. And it is now the second leading cause of death for our young people. And it's because of these stressors that they're experiencing has caused them to not seek help, that the best thing that they can do uh, is just commit suicide. And that really scares me. And that's directly correlational um, to our school safety issue as well.
Well, and again, having people in band or after school extracurricular things, sports, all those kind of things were a saving grace for me. I can only imagine as that's being pulled out. I'd love to see the date that as that's pulled out, what's happening to the statistic on suicides.
Well, it's going to get worse, and kids are going to drop out of school more because they're not connecting to their school. I mean, we're again, we decide that those courses that kids enjoy, those extracurriculars that they enjoy, are the low-hanging fruit. That's the low-hanging fruit that you have to get rid of and do the state and federal mandates first.
Mm-hmm.
And when schools cut, they cut the low-hanging fruit. And those are the ones that gets kids involved in our school. Yeah. Those are the very classes that teaches kids vocational skills. Yeah. We've got kids right now that can leave our high school and go and take our apprenticeship program and go straight into the local union and be an operator. I mean, we're a laborer. We're doing so many things right now trying to keep that program alive, but still yet those kids have to take 4 years of English. They have to take 3 years of math. They have to take all of these state mandates instead of letting us get this kid ready to be a successful adult.
And that's a point that I think is missed in schools is what's the purpose? I mean, what is the end thing, the product, if you will? If you're manufacturing a tire, at the end you have this great tire. Well, we're kind of quote unquote manufacturing some intelligence and some world knowledge for our kids. What in the end do we want them to be able to do? I've always felt, especially with my kids, to be able to go out and live the life that they want to live. And it seems like this cookie cutter way that we do it is what is the end result? That they have memorized some stuff and they've passed some tests. And too often you hear of these kids not being able to read at a sufficient rate or write to be able to go into work. And the too much in the business community is arguing that they have to retrain a lot of these people coming out of not only high school or this kind of school, even secondary schools, community colleges and colleges. Thoughts?
Certainly. I mean, we're at a crossroads here where with this technology usage and the ability to be visually stimulated, over 4,000 waking hours a year, we've got kids that don't need that. They don't need knowledge retention because you can go get knowledge at your phone in a matter of seconds. If you need to know something, you Google it and then you go find out. And you Google it and you get small parts of that. And now you've comprehended that small part. Why do I need to read the entire manual when I can get my information immediately from Google? I do it. I'm certain you do it. We go to Google, we get the information we want. If I need to fix something on my lawnmower, I YouTube it and I see how somebody else has done it. And the YouTube shows me. I don't read anything. It shows me how to do it.
Yeah.
So tell me, when you stick that kind of kid that's visually stimulated, that's got it, that's extremely bright, and you put them in a reading program and you tell them that they can't read, what are we telling that kid?
Yeah.
That kid's super bright. They don't read very well because they're so inundated in this other world. And now we've told them that they're not a good reader. They're not smart. What is that kid supposed to do?
Yeah.
And here again, we've got society that believes you have to be a certain level of reader to be a success. And we take a test to show them that they're not there, even though we can take this kid and he can go out and he can put a motor together without one bit of instructions. Is that not important anymore? Because society doesn't test that. We've got a kid that can go out and build an entire house by themselves. Is that not important anymore? Because we're getting rid of those programs across America in order to put them in another math class so they can take a test so we can compare ourselves to Finland. And I don't care about how Finland does. I care about each and every child in my school and that they are successful and happy. That doesn't mean that they're a great test taker or that they're great in calculus. It means that they've connected with communities and they're doing something that they love and enjoy, and they're raising a family, and they've come back home and I get to see them and tell them that. That's my vision of success, not a great SAT score.
Steve, there's a presidential election coming up. You think you can run? I'd like to have you run. This would be great to have someone in power that has this kind of thought, because you're thinking a lot the way I do.
No, sir. I ran for state senate 2 years ago, and I will not do that. I guess I say too many things that are on my mind. I think you're supposed to be all things to all people if you want to be in politics, and I don't mind making people angry. So.
Well, I think there's somebody in the White House right now that doesn't mind that either, so maybe it would work. So, all right, talk to me now. Let's get deeper into what you're talking about, because you mentioned the dark web. I don't even know if I can run into the dark. How do you get to the dark web? Can you run into the dark web? What is the dark web?
No, you can't just simply Google into the dark web. The dark web is only you can only get to that through a special browser called Tor. And this Tor browser is a .onion database that is it's hundreds of times larger than the internet that you see when you go to Google. So when you Google something, it brings you up all kinds of websites with pretty names. And when you go to use this Tor website, it has a little what looks like an onion up there, a Vidalia onion. That's their logo. If you see that on your child's computer, delete that immediately, because once you go into that area, you can go into websites that you can buy any type of drug that you want. You can buy weapons. You can hire a hitman. You can hire prostitutes. You can do anything known to the dark side of life through this portal. And it was designed for private for private browsing, right? So we've got Big Brother watching. Let's go to this private area so nobody can track me and trace me, because I'm paranoid that somebody's watching me at all times. So, and it's jumped out into the deep web, which is something where journalists can use and things that could be good for society. And then the dark web is part of that, which is there's no place for that in society. And we're having trouble in law enforcement being able to trace it, because what they do is they get a VPN, and there's several sites that they can get a VPN, which is a virtual private network, and it bounces off so many different sites that we can't trace where this particular user is. Pedophilia is rampant through this, but let me tell you, kids can see things through that is that next level that they're always looking for. I mean, they're looking for that shock factor, and you can get it some of it on YouTube. Yeah. You get to that dark web, if you see that Vidalia onion, know that your children are seeing things that you could never imagine is possible on the internet.
So can you send me a screenshot of that onion, and we'll superimpose it up on this so people can see what it looks like? Do you have one? Can you put it up? Can you even put it on right now?
Well, I've got.
No, that's fine. Just email it to me, and I will throw it up when we put this up on YouTube.
Okay.
Yep. So, did you say 100 times bigger than what? You said some crazy number, like 100 times bigger?
Hundreds times bigger. I think I read in some research that it was like 200 to 300 times bigger than the internet that you see when you go to Google. That's what it makes it so impossible to trace where all these websites are. And it's not like SeanBurke.com. We're talking about a title of a website that is, it's across the entire screen with so many characters you can't possibly trace it or type it back in. That's part of them being able to hide where they are at.
Well, I've certainly heard over time different busts that have happened on the dark web and whatnot. I just have never. I suppose you can just go find somewhere on the web how to get onto the dark web. I mean, I suppose there's YouTube videos on how you get on.
Absolutely, it was simple. I mean, throughout my entire training on cyber intelligence, um, this was a major area of that, and showing us as law enforcement how to make how we can make our own fake personas throughout this, so we can try to go in and get our pedophiles, so we can trace where some of this stuff's going. So I'm going to put this up there. I don't believe you're going to be able to see it
No, it's not.
very effectively.
No, it's not. But I'll tell you what. What we're going to try and do is get a screenshot of it, and I'll put it up on the screen, superimpose it so people can see it.
Okay.
So,
what email do you want me to send this to? I'll send it right now.
let's send it to Hey Sean, HeySean at
Yes.
Sean Burke, SeanBurke.net. And while he's doing that, that's for anybody out there that has any comments for Steve or myself. You can always email me at heysean@seanburke.net. You can get this show at seanburke.net. You can also subscribe at seanburke.net for future shows. They'll drop right into your email box after they're aired. This does go out on WSMN 1590 AM out of Southern New Hampshire and Northern Boston. And then it goes out as a podcast, just the audio portion out on iTunes and SoundCloud and what else, Spotify and etc. This video will be on YouTube, and it'll also be up on my Facebook page. So hope you share it. I really love this information. So, all right, because I want to get a little bit more on this, and then we'll wrap it up because I know I need to let you go. So we have kids that are potentially getting on the dark web. So if a parent sees this onion thing, obviously that's a problem. There's so much porn, there's so much stuff available out there. So what does a parent do? Is there a program? I'll tell you, when my kids were growing up some years ago, there used to be programs, parental programs, things you could do. What's out there right now for parents?
There's several monitoring apps, and I'll just for instance, within our school and many schools across the nation, we employ technology. We're a one-to-one school district, so all of our kids have their own device. They're our device. Many of them have our wireless as part of that, so we can kind of control that. Within those, we have a system called Go Guardian, where when they type in certain search terms, certain search words, or they receive certain information via their emails or whatever on our device, it can trigger and send to us if they're searching suicide or weapons or school shootings or things like that. It triggers. Well, there are apps that do that as well that you can put on for your children. One of them is, and I don't sponsor any of these, but Bark seems to be very similar to this Go Guardian, in that if something comes across your child's cell phone or computer, it would notify you that there is some inappropriate content through there. There's many of them out there. Just go out and search them and find something. But I mean, you can put things on your phone. Your kids are going to be savvy enough; they're going to be able to get around that. With all the firewalls we put into the schools, I just go talk to kids. I say, "Okay, well, how do you get around it now?" And they tell me. And I find out, and that's how I research this type of stuff. I figured out how there's all kinds of ways they can get around our firewall. I've had kids stop our entire internet before, and I just walked in and I said, "Okay, how did you do it? Take me through the steps of how you were able to stop our internet here at the school." And he did. You know, I didn't tell him I was going to have them arrested or anything. I just wanted to know. I wanted the knowledge because, again, I'm that old fogey that did not grow up in this world. I want to help everybody else that's having to live in this world. And that's the only way you can do it, is to get in that child's world.
Yeah, and that, I mean, you know, it shows some initiative. You got to hand it to the kid for shutting down the internet. He has skill set, and so if you can turn that skill set to the right side and have him use that, I did that with my son. My son was big on video gaming, but I was really big on we got to go outside too. So we were part of the Boy Scouts and we did things, and it was our balance. But he now has a great career already started, just graduating from college in a startup in Seattle, using those incredible skills that he perfected being a gamer. So you can't just ignore, again, to parents. I've had parents ask me, so what do I do? Well, that's what I did is we just tried to make a balance of indoor, outdoor, with your hands, playing soccer. But yeah, he loved, and I tell you, he played games that, Steve, I would not have ever figured out. These were not just paddle games. These were, Dad, I'm doing a whole strategy here, and I come back in 20 minutes and we see what happens. And I have no idea what he was doing. So I feel you have to guide in the right direction so that it can actually, in our society, become extremely beneficial, some of these things.
I present all over the nation to schools, and part of my presentation is on awareness of what's out there. And as sick as this world can be, some of the things that I do is one of the, with all the number one game out there is Fortnite. My children play Fortnite, but what many parents don't understand is there's rooms within Fortnite where people can get to your kids. There are simulations where they can simulate a school shooter. And I show a video in my presentations of the actual school shooter simulation where kids take turn, young kids take turn being the school shooter and shooting all of their friends in this simulator. I show them excerpts of the Super Columbine Massacre video game, of the Virginia Tech video game, the Sandy Hook video game. These things are out there that kids, our kids, are being able to access. And whether they think it's good or not, they're seeing it. And that brings up some trauma within their lives. This school shooter simulation in Fortnite, I couldn't tell you how many people said, please email me that, because my kids are on Fortnite all the time. And I tell them, well, do they also have something called Discord on their phone? And then they'll look at me like, what does that mean? Well, that's how you get around the parental controls on chatting with people. We had a kid just walk up to our fire station and say, I was abducted in Mississippi. We were playing Fortnite. I was communicating with these two guys on Discord, and they said they were going to kill themselves if I didn't come with them. And so I went with them. He came from Mississippi to Illinois.
Wow.
And so we arrested them, and it all turned out great, but he was trying to get around the parental controls. These things are out there. Make yourself aware of what's out there. They have cloaking devices all over the place for your kids' phones, and they're going to look great. They're going to have your picture, your mom's picture, whatever on the front. It's going to look awesome. Those cloaking devices can then cloak those different things, like the Tor browser that I was just talking about, or anything else that you have on there, or pictures. Sexting is one of the biggest reasons kids are killing themselves today. They send a photo to their boyfriend or girlfriend, and they break up, and that photo goes rampant. Look up Amanda Todd. If you do nothing else, look up Amanda Todd on YouTube and look at her story. She tried to go to 3 different schools to get away from one picture that she sent of her bare chest, and she couldn't do it and ended up killing herself. And she told everybody she's going to kill herself, and she got it. She did it. It was the saddest thing that you'll ever see. See the signs with your kids and find help now.
Wow. Do you have a website that parents that you have? I mean, would it be through the Safe School Systems? Maybe you have a website or something that parents would learn more about, any of the stuff you're just talking about?
Well, you can get to me there, and that's generally my speaking website, but drstevewebb.com is where a culmination of everything that I do. I mean, I've got a 3-step safety guide there for people that are just trying to help people go out in public and get back to the perceptions of getting your nose out of your phone and using your senses to be able to determine you're in a dangerous area, a dangerous situation, and get your kids away from this. Because what's the first thing you do when you get in your car? You probably look at your phone. What's the last thing you do when you're getting out of your car? You're staring at your phone because you can't use it while you're driving. When you're staring at your phone, all of your attention is focused on that instead of everything that's around you. And all you need to do is just go look up robberies or anything else on YouTube, and you can see where many people have their head down. They're just not paying attention to where they're at, and that spells disaster. So a lot of these things are within that drstevewebb.com website, and you can email me through that or at swebb@safeschoolsystems.org if you want to get me direct.
This is awesome. Dr. Steve Webb has been our guest. Steve, I'm going to ask you in a minute. I'm going to have you summarize any. You and I could probably talk for a few hours here. So we're about out of time. I'm going to give a little bit more background again on you, but I'm going to have you summarize whatever else you'd like to say here to the audience in a second here. He is a police officer, 11 years as a police officer, an educator, 28 years and as an administrator in his local district, 21 years as a superintendent. He teaches as an associate professor. He has a book out called Education in a Violent World. You can get that in any bookstore, but also on Amazon. So, Steve, what else? Anything else you want to end off with here?
Well, if you will, most of my presentations I end with this: the advocacy part of what we do as adults and being change agents for our kids. When I was a basketball coach back in my younger teaching and administrator days, my cheerleading sponsor, her name is Krista. We became close friends, and her son is now the comeback player of the year in the state of Kentucky, which is about an hour away from where I live. Mason's the comeback player of the year because he ran cross country and did great, and he had a bullet in his neck the entire time because they couldn't get it out from the Marshall County shooting. And when I called her after the shooting to see if everybody was okay, he wasn't okay. But she said, Steve, she said, a quarter-inch difference, and we would be burying him. A quarter-inch difference. And I want to leave you with this. Right now, everybody that's listening, you may be the quarter-inch difference in a kid's life. We are not being able to see them at schools. Many community functions are not happening. If you see a child and you see something going on, say something. We need to make sure that these children understand that they are safe. And right now, I can't guarantee that. You are that quarter-inch difference. If you do nothing, nothing may happen. You'll never be able to evaluate that. But if you help me out in our endeavors here, then you may be that quarter-inch difference to keep from burying a kid.
Powerful. I love it. Really happy we had this conversation, and we may come back to you and get updates as we go through the rest of the year. I really like what you're thinking. I like what you're pushing forward, and I appreciate what it is. We have a whole series on our show called For Change Makers, and brother, you are one of those. So we appreciate you being on the Schomburg Show, and we'll be back. So please be safe out there. Continue doing what you're doing for the kids.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Steve Webb, I love it. I got to tell you, didn't know what I was going to get when I got. That's what happens with some of these guests. You have no idea what you're going to get, and boy, did we get something good on that. I really, really like what he has to say, and listen to it. There are things you can do. Number one, communicate with your kids. Be aware of what's going on, and do not hammer them. I always remember as a kid that I felt at times adults did not understand the importance of what I was dealing with. Something was wrong with my bike, let's say. That was a big, big deal for me. It was huge. It encompassed my entire life for that day, for that moment. I needed that bike to go somewhere, and I couldn't do it, and it was broken, and I didn't know how to fix it, but I had to get over where it was. It was important to me. Just as important as today when I have a business and I need to get an invoice out to a client and they need it right away. It's just as important. And I remember as a kid thinking, I'm not going to forget this. I'm not going to forget what it's like as a kid in my world, what was important to me at that time when I'm an adult. And certainly I probably have. It's impossible to be perfect, but I have certainly tried with my kids to understand that in their world, what is going on is incredibly important. It's the same way with anybody, your neighbor, your friends. What's going on in their world is critical. So with your kids especially, stay in touch with them. Try to understand what they're doing. You don't have to be their best friend. You don't have to be a disciplinarian necessarily. But you certainly need to be able to communicate and help guide them, because what they're trying to do is figure out what is going on. They're learning. They're trying to orientate themselves in the world, trying to pick up some skills so that they can actually go out in life and do something that's productive. They all want to do that. You know a lot of my thoughts on this. I've spoken about it before. I think kids are actually in school too long. I think we need to let them out sooner. I think we can get all the education they need done quicker and get into the world and making money and being part of life. Because when you're excluded from life, it's no fun. If you're excluded from anything, it's no fun. There we go. I hope you enjoyed this. By the way, if you see my hair, for my listeners, I haven't had a haircut in 4 months, but here in Los Angeles, we've now opened the hair places. So on a few days from now, I'm going to get a haircut. We'll see how much I cut off. We'll see what it looks like the next time. So thank you to Tracy Anderscavage for doing a great job of finding this gentleman, Dr. Steve Webb. We will put on the email that goes out. If you're a subscriber, if you're not, go to seanburke.net and go and subscribe on that page. It's not subscribing at iTunes, which you can do and all that. It's subscribing on our page for our email list. When we send out the show, we'll include some links that he just said there. So you can always write to me at heysean@seanburke.net. I appreciate you listening. Appreciate you coming along. And be good to each other. We got a lot of stuff going on in the world. And the most important thing we can do is communicate. So communicate to others. Write them a note. Write them an email. Call them up. Do a Zoom call. Send them a card. Do a snail mail thing. But let's take care of each other. All right? Till the next time. Adios. Bye-bye.